Howdy, my name is Andrew Graff. Today I'll be talking to you about the ant-keeping phenomena, how the entomology profession can benefit from engaging with ant-keeping hobbyists, what problems we currently face, and how we can go about solving them. I do so from the perspective of an entomologist that studied ants but only considered the hobby after graduating and being in the workforce. Just a quick quip about myself, I am an entomologist that graduated from Texas A&M University in 2016. And presently work in the pest control industry as a certified applicator. My BCE is just a test or so away I can almost taste it. Also, like some of you, I am crazy about ants. I hope to make abundantly clear today that there is also a whole world of non-degree holding, non-certified, plethora of everyday people who are just as crazy or crazier about ants too. A force of fascination that we should be harnessing. There are a wide range of organisms that people worldwide take on as pets, each with their own varying popularity and culture. One in particular that has been gaining traction over the past 2 decades is something quite niche, unusual and unthinkable to a lot of people. That would be keeping ants as pets. This interest and fascination is global. It has produced an entire culture primarily connected online around this common fascination to observe the mighty social insects in captivity. To provide some means to show the kind of enthusiasm this hobby has generated, please consider what we see here. We have a popular YouTube channel, Ants Canada. It began several years ago. Here you can see on a Google Trends plot it has gained significant popularity since 2016. It is now 2020. Sustained engagement and interest. This is also just one example of the many channels on YouTube that are dedicated to ant-keeping content. You will notice in early 2020 a negative trend begins. I can imagine this is likely a COVID-related disruption. Ant-keeping is a very involved hobby, which puts the old adage, an entomologist is a biologist with a job, to the test. You have to go out and find the ants. Unfortunately, the COVID situation has significantly impacted many lives. People have changed their priorities and many have been restricted in their daily activities. Aside from YouTube content creation, we have seen a wide array of books on ant-keeping being written and published by hobbyists. To put in that kind of time and effort demonstrate that there is a demand for it and there are enough people interested in it that such a labor becomes worthwhile. A quick search on Amazon brought up these 5 titles. A great number of people are going to prefer these comprehensive materials over trying to piece together information from publications within scientific journals. In my experience with the ant-keeping hobby, I encounter people from a wide array of backgrounds, young and old, those who went to college and those who did not, grade schoolers even, educators, entrepreneurs, and so on. To illustrate this, let me tell you a quick story. Imagine being randomly contacted on your social media by a stranger. This stranger is looking to begin ant-keeping. You have specimens to sell, native only of course, and they make some selections, seems typical. However, this person now also asks if you could come to their own town on a weekend, which is 5 hours away, so that you and your wife can teach them everything you know about ants and how to keep them. They even insist on paying for your lodging at a local hotel. You end up spending the entire weekend there doing just that, and it was an absolute joy to do. The gentleman, his wife, and children are positively excited about their new ant colonies, have a much better idea of what they are getting into, and had a really good hands-on experience on finding, observing, and collecting ants in their own local area. This gentleman is a successful entrepreneur with several businesses, a very accomplished individual. He has everything he and his family needs, yet the fascination of ants was clearly motivating enough for him to solicit me, a complete stranger, to come out and do as I did for him at his own monetary expense. Makes you ask yourself, how crazy are you about ants? Odds are someone who isn't an academic is exceeding your efforts in this category. Speaking of being crazy about ants, let's look at what some people are willing to do for said ants. The fascination has driven a plethora of innovations to house ants, keep them comfortable, and to feed them efficiently. First, we'll look at some examples of formicariums. For those unaware, a formicarium is simply anything that is used for housing ants. Here we see a wide range of designs. They come as all-in-ones, mass-produced plastic. They can be 3D printed, some are substrate-filled. There are even ones that are hand-carved from wood. Imagine having the time and desire to sit down in hand-carved tunnels and chambers for ants in hardwood. That is some serious dedication. or the patience to hand-paint small-scale buildings in a post-apocalyptic setting to set the scene just for your ants. These are just a few of the many examples of the ingenuity sparked by the hobby. Here we have feeding equipment, primarily for delivering water and carbohydrate sources such as honey to ants in a cleaner and more efficient manner. And the top middle is an insert for ants kept in test tube setups. Its purpose is to provide a shelf for solid foods and a bowl for liquids. The challenge with test tubes is efficiently introducing foods and removing old materials without overly intruding on the ants or allowing them to escape. That insert allows for the quick removal of those materials as well as the reintroduction of the new. It is a completely 3D printed object. Pictured here is a collection of various innovations that come from a North Carolina-based company called Tar Heel Ants. I myself have more direct experience with these than any other designs. I'd like to spotlight some of the innovations. Their formicariums have water towers that slowly release moisture via evaporation. A porous material that absorbs moisture and in conjunction with the water tower produce a gradient of low to high humidity across the nesting space. The water towers are refilled via syringes using a small tube that opens on the exterior. The tubing at the bottom right is what we have named a nestmate, and it is simply a water delivery system. A tube with very fine steel mesh and a rubber stopper. Naturally, you create a vacuum when filling it and sealing it, and the ants drink from the other side. Now, with all this fascination about keeping ants, one must, of course, figure out how to acquire them. Some people just want a few, others are intermediate. We also have some seriously ambitious overachievers. I might be one of them. Emphasis on the might. I officially began ant keeping in March of 2018. In just under 2 years, I have obtained, through various methods, 34 different species of ants in the state of Texas, the greatest state in the Union. These are all live colonies and still with us today. This was done while being married, having a full-time job, and being essentially a full-time fencing athlete. Now imagine what a young person with way too much time on their hands could do in that same time span. There are individuals with double the species diversity in their live collections in my state alone. That is a lot of ants. A lot of opportunities for citizen science, if you ask me. Specimen samples, observational data, geographical distribution, nuptial flight records, and so on. Now, why have I shown you all these things? To demonstrate that these non-academic, non-professional, everyday people share a powerful common interest with you, the researcher, the academic, and the professional. This shared zeal for ants is a powerhouse for citizen science-driven accomplishments just waiting to be harnessed effectively. Two worlds that are closer to each other than we often perceive. With that in mind, we must now ask, why does it even matter that there is a potential worldwide army of citizen scientists that are crazy about ants? Well, simply put, formicids have their tarsi in everything, literally. They hold relevance in nearly every facet of entomology and other biological sciences. Obviously, we have the myrmecologists. But we also have urban entomology, taxonomy, morphology, agronomy, myrmecophily, ecology, and toxicology, just to name a few. They are even in your homes. No escaping that, is there? Well, it is, at least until you call for me to deal with them. Point is, data on ants is beneficial to many scientific disciplines, both directly and indirectly. So, we have an army of ant-crazy people and a need for scientific exploration. What can this army do? Well, first and foremost, it's like having an ocean of highly enthusiastic observers. They can provide insights and information that can assist in current research and help formulate new scientific inquiry, providing a basis for collaboration with you. Additionally, this provides a network of knowledgeable individuals that can engage in public outreach for entomology. Alright, we have an army of ant-crazy people with a lot of helpful potential. What is the problem? Well, we, the academics, the professionals, don't seem to be utilizing them. There is a lack of communication and collaboration. How are we passing up such a huge resource? It's quite simple. Whether we intend it or not, we have a tendency to only look within the confines of academia, like being in our own little world. There is an unspoken and unacknowledged veil between the academic and the citizen scientist. This can take on many forms. A good portion of it is simply unintentional unawareness, like tunnel vision. Sometimes, though, it is a pride. Aside from a lack of collaborative engagement, most ant keepers tend to not bother keeping detailed notes about their observations either. Obviously, some want to keep ants purely for entertainment purposes. However, a great number of them would likely engage in detailing of information if they were motivated to do so. As an example concerning the tunnel vision of academia, I am a good example. I was completely wound up and absorbed into the academic settings at my university, studying diligently and getting good results, taking advantage of what the institution had to offer. Looking back, I realize I in many ways lived in a bubble those days. I tangoed with trap-dry ants in Dominica and bullet ants in Costa Rica. I was even in charge of managing the Firmicides section of the university insect collection as a curatorial assistant. I focused on ants throughout my entire degree, and not once did it occur to me to keep ants as pets. Nor did it occur to me that getting to know people who do would be of any value. Several years after getting my degree, I saw a queen ant running across the pavement while doing a pest control service. It was Camponotus discolor, a common carpenter ant. Within a few weeks, I ironically found myself traveling back to College Station, home of my university, and getting a real serious introduction to the hobby by a student who isn't even an entomologist and has far more experience with native ants than I could have imagined. So, with that in mind, what are we to do? Obliterate the barriers, of course. To do so, you need to open the doors to collaboration. Find ways to incentivize yourselves to seek out these ant-keeping hobbyists in order to facilitate collaborative engagement. Doing so can help further your interests while providing an opportunity for the hobbyist to gain experience in professional scientific work. This mutual engagement can yield great results. Exploring ways to incentivize the hobbyist is important as well. This can turn a non-note-taking hobbyist into a motivated data source, especially when they are in possession of thriving ant colonies that happen to be important to your particular research interests. This society needs to begin seriously engaging with ant-keeping organizations. Promoting and supporting well-organized ant-keeping groups will help provide a better means to communicate between the professionals and the hobbyists. In doing so, the culture of ant-keeping can be positively influenced as well. I personally have desired to form the Texas Ant-Keeper Association, a model that could be duplicated for all U.S. territories along with a national level of leadership. If any of you are interested in making that happen, I would love to work with you on that. Such a group would be foremost educational, capable of compiling data, publishing findings, organizing engagement, and excellent for public outreach. It would also be an excellent way to make hobbyists easily reachable by researchers and academics. Another important benefit of engaging with the ant-keeping community is successful public outreach. Ever been to that classic local event where students or labs set up an entomology booth to show Cornell drawers full of specimens and to answer questions about insects? How much of an impression do you think that actually makes on young people especially? Sure, they are fascinated with the encounter, but that excitement wears off. They may not see such a sight again for a long time. Also, what are the odds that their parents, family, or friends will want to squash or discourage an interest in insects? Mine did. Clearly this was not a successful strategy in my case. They only accelerated my fervor. However, I am pretty sure I would be an exception. How much more effective would entomology outreach be if you could normalize and officiate keeping ants as pets? Social insects are clearly fascinating. In this case, they could actually interact with and keep them around, learning about them on their own time, as opposed to staring at dead specimens or holding a Madagascar hissing roach at least once. That would have a long-term impression on them versus a transient one that will encounter a lot of discouragement. So in conclusion, there is undeniably large worldwide interest in keeping ants as pets. The individuals engaged in this hobby can be a valuable citizen science resource. Both you, the academics, and professionals can greatly benefit from collaborating and engaging with this culture. The present state of affairs is a lack of engagement, and it can be addressed by tackling the communication barriers. And here we just have some acknowledgments. I'd like to thank my wife, Michelle Bethilier, my good friend Joseph Decker and Atticus Sutras, and the ant-keeping community at large for giving me this opportunity to talk to you, as well as the ESA for getting to put on this presentation. If you'd like to contact me, my information is below.